around. I never know if we're actually live until
And we're
we
live.
are live. Look at that. Now we are live. Apparently 2.5 minutes in somehow. I don't know. Well, either way. So if you're watching us, we are on, I think, across the media platforms, the groups, the Facebook page, the Twitch, all of it, YouTube, all that good stuff. We are chit-chatting with some guys who are from Timeworn Watches. They're going to go through some of this cool stuff that they've got going on. They have a Kickstarter right now, which we'll shamelessly plug all throughout it. I think the better person to explain it all would probably be Cameron or John.
Yeah, Cameron, John. So I've known Cameron, guys. It's Max. Nice to see you, Lunar Replicas. And you know that I'm all about recreating stuff absolutely perfectly, and if not perfectly, then at least a modern version that is functional in your life today. And in this case, we're looking at an incredible project that is basically bringing the style and the functionality of World War II watches to your daily life, and they're really phenomenally made. They're just going through what's your development and stuff right now. The Kickstarter is doing really well, but we wanted to give you a little help with this and also show everyone, our members and our readers and watchers, some incredible photos and updates from you guys since Kickstarter has been going really well. So without further ado, Cameron, John, take it away. So when you say show some B-roll, roll that beautiful footage. We'll put some pictures up in the background.
Okay, well, thank you for that introduction. Much appreciated. A bit to live up to, but yeah, basically, as Max said, we are Timeworn Watches, and we're a small startup company based in New Hampshire. And a couple of years ago, during the height of the pandemic, when I was finishing up college for the third time and deciding what I was going to do with my life, I decided I wanted to own a watch company. I've been in World War II reenactments for many, many years. I grew up working in a jewelry store and breaking more watches than I fixed. And I wanted to basically combine those efforts. And I resulted in this culmination with this project where I've always loved World War II and I've loved history. I've always loved wristwatches. I've always loved Waltham wristwatches. My grandfather wore them his entire life. And I said to myself, why is nobody accurately reproducing these? They're iconic. They're ubiquitous in World War II pop culture. I mean, you look at B-roll footage of bomber pilots hacking their watches and synchronizing them for missions, infantry platoon leaders talking to their men, synchronizing with squad leaders. They were just an integral part of life and watchmaking and
in every
A11.
In every branch. I mean, some mariners using their watches to time.
Oh, absolutely.
Airmen timing their flights over bombing runs. I mean, everything.
And with that said, nobody had ever really taken a crack at these before on a large scale, which didn't really make any sense to me. So we
at least accurately. I mean, they had taken cracks, but
there's been homages over the years. There's been a lot of influence drawn from these watches, but actual diehard accurate reproductions just really didn't exist in the market, especially not affordably. So we decided we were going to pick a model that worked for us, and ultimately that became 2 and then 3 and now 4, because the company that we are replicating ours after, which is Waltham, that was based in Massachusetts, their 1942 specification watch actually implemented the same waterproof case across all the different branches and various models. So we were able to produce 4 for effectively 1. So right now up on the Kickstarter, we're taking pre-orders. We have the A11, which is the Army Air Force's hack watch. We have what's the abbreviated version of the A11 is the FSSC, which is the Navy's version, which is what John is wearing. And then we have 2 Army models. I'm wearing one. This is the Ordnance Department 10609. That's your typical enlisted man's watch. And we have the 10617, which is the fancier Army Ordnance Department watch.
Yeah, I wish I could pull that up a little bit there. You can see.
Oh, there we go. Now we got them across the board there.
Yep.
Excellent.
Across the board, you have the A11.
That's on the left.
Yep. And then you have the Enlistedman's 09.
With the white.
Then you have the. Yep. You can see right there. I don't know, Cameron, if you want to go over the difference between the 1709. Just
historically, or as far as what we're doing?
What we're doing, just
Okay. Well, I mean, the 10609, which is second in from the left there, was your typical, what I would call a grunt watch. Squad leaders, platoon sergeants, first sergeants, whomever rated a wristwatch in the military during World War II could have and would have been issued a watch just like that. It's simple, it's durable, it glows in the dark, it's waterproof, it's durable. And really, nobody had ever done that before, which is so strange to me because there's such a big collecting circle and such a cult following of these timepieces. And that watch is distant cousin to the one on the far right, which is the 10617, which I call that an officer's model. But at the height of World War II, with instrument production, compasses, periscopes, tank clocks, everything and anything, these companies were pumping them out by the tens of thousands. And a lot of the time, say a unit gets to theater, they land in France, and they're doing their supply and inventory. X amount of rifles per division, X amount of ammunition for blocks of fire, X amount of hand grenades. Watches are a very big part of that. They were actually a controlled item. They were referred to on the TOE as a fire control instrument. And at the time, whatever was on hand in supply is really what you got. So you could be a captain and you could have the enlisted watch. You could be a corporal and you could have the officer grade watch. Now, pictured there with the loom, that's the Navy A11. So the A11 is actually not a model designation. It's a specification. Government contracts, the Ordnance Department, the War Department, etc., held certain blocks of instruction for these companies, what these watches were supposed to be and what they could withstand. And the Air Corps' watch, or the Army Air Forces, the A11, pictured on the left there, it's kind of just a catch-all term. Oh, that's an A11 associated with that model of watch, but it's actually, that's what it was manufactured to the A11 specification. So the Navy and the Air Corps both had an A11, just kind of different designators. But the Navy said to themselves, they wanted loom on their watches. Now that's the Air Force, as you will, that's their one. Very plain, contrasting dial, black and white. But the important thing about this watch is that it has a hacking function, meaning when you pull the stem all the way out, that second hand is going to stop.
And it's internal too. You know, some watches from this time period, actually, the hacking function was literally a pin that popped up and held the second hand in place. So you'd have to wait until it swung back around to the 12 for that to actually work. So this was a completely internal hacking time, and you could synchronize. You know, that was the whole point. It was synchronizing.
The whole point was being able, because you have to think about the measure of importance associated with that. Let's say you have
navigation or bombing run or whatever, you know, all
1,000 bombers flying over Germany that afternoon. Mm-hmm. Every single bomber in that formation has to be where it needs to be to the second, because otherwise you could be dropping bombs on another plane. You could be flying into each other. The mission itself, meteorology experts would determine cloud coverage and things like that. You're a minute off, you're exposed to enemy fire, you get people killed.
1 second. By the way, like, so from back in the day, they're still using sextants on aircraft. 1 second translates to, I think, a quarter nautical mile.
That's true.
A quarter nautical mile in formation, forget about it. I mean, like, you're flying and you're
super
totally off, you know.
And the crazy thing is that the A11 specification, we're talking about these watches and the reliability to the second. The specification actually only called for 30 seconds accuracy a day.
Wow. Well, you figure on a mission or something, if you synchronize within the, you know, 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours of a mission, you're probably still going to be pretty close.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Waltham produced them in much better grade than that.
Mm-hmm.
With the hacking lever, because they added an extra joule. I believe the A11 was 17 joules.
So in this picture here with these, this is an original over here on the right. Is that
That's
correct?
an original on the right. That's a Navy A11. Yep. We modeled it as the FSSC, which is the federal stock number designation that the Navy used on the back of the watch.
So real quick, the originals look like they were, what was it, nickel-plated brass, if I'm not mistaken.
That's exactly what it is. Yep.
Are you guys doing nickel-plated brass, or are you going stainless?
We actually couldn't. They would not offer it to us. However, during the mid part of the war, towards the end of 1943, the military needed the nickel for internal components and bombs and other sensitive materials, and the specifications changed, and the watches actually did go to stainless steel.
Okay. So you've
Like my
improved a little
A11.
bit on the design here.
It's aquatic. We're using 316L aquatic steel. It's very comparable to what was used back then. And actually, honestly, my biggest complaint with our steel is that it's what I call scratchy, and it gets patina very easily because it can't be hardened.
I mean, look at this original.
But that's the thing. The originals would scratch just looking at them.
Oh, you'd see them get brassed out too. I mean, like you.
Oh, absolutely. I've had them
just from a
completely
cuff,
bonded
just
metal.
from a from
Yeah.
that wool cuff.
Yeah. But no, ours, I mean, I'm my own worst enemy. Ours are relatively durable. We have water resistance to 50 meters, and a lot of 5 ATM watches, they're not all created equal. I stand by ours. I have swam with it. I've gone on the ocean with it. I've showered with it. I've worked on my car with it. I've cleaned rifles with it. I cannot get these watches to leak.
I dragged it behind our boat.
He did.
Did you
Good.
really?
Yeah, I dragged it
Good,
behind my boat
because-
and I left it in the water for a week.
We get a lot of folks that, especially in a lot of the diving communities that, we do a lot of diving watches, and they say, oh, well, and I say diving community loosely because what I really mean is just like the Seamaster community that we have. And we get a lot of guys that come in there and they see other types of watches and occasionally discuss them. And one of the main things that you see is they say, well, if it doesn't have 200 meters of water resistance, I don't know
Or
if I'm
screw
going to wear
down
it.
crown or something.
Right. And
We
so
often install that.
all of the time we see that. And of course, I know people that dive recreationally. I know guys that dive, professionally, commercially.
On a Timex.
They're wearing Timexes, they're wearing G-Shocks, they're wearing watches with 50, 100 meter water resistance, and they're not even remotely touching
Modern
anywhere near that.
materials can't be understated, and the subtleties of what we've implemented. So this is a waterproof watch for all intent and purpose because we're replicating waterproof watches, and the case backs of them are actually screw down. I believe octagon, 10-sided. Is that the correct verbiage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to school, right? But and we've implemented a rubber gasket in the rear of that case. So once it seals, it's pretty much airtight. Same thing with the crown. It's got an internal rubber gasket. Once it clicks into the tube, it's sealed. And the crystals we're using are very similar to originals. Originals, a lot of people think that they had this big cartoonish bubble dome crystal on them. That's actually not necessarily true. A lot of the reproductions have that because they think it's Art Deco or it's vintage looking. The watches of World War II actually implemented what they called a single curve crystal. And the reason for that is because if it's less pronounced, there's less chance of it catching on something and breaking. Mm-hmm. So we're using acrylic plexiglass. So it's basically relatively shatterproof. I've dropped them on a couple tables. I've dropped them on the ground.
Look, that's what the Speedmaster uses. I mean, acrylic plexiglass is
we
Omega
really
calls it Pisolite, but it's the same.
We really beat the hell out of these things to make sure that people would get their money's worth. And there's been a couple other offerings of homages and watches that are similar to World War II that don't quite fit the bill. I mean, they're close, but most of the time they oversize them. They're 42 millimeters or 40 millimeters, and they have 22 millimeter straps. It's like wearing a clock on your wrist.
Right. They're not kind of true to form.
Well, I mean,
32 millimeters, 33 with the crown, 16 millimeter straps.
There it is on a wrist.
I mean, I spent the last, I spent a week ago at D-Day Kania at the reenactment there. And, people were wearing the watches and they were asking all about them. Like, oh, what about this? And I would look at theirs and I'm like, look, man, here is this part from the 1.7, the officer's model. Here's this part from the enlistment model. Here's this part from, the A11. And they would have, a conglomerate of all those different watches together.
They would make a hybrid.
Like Frankenwatches?
Frankenwatch. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what you get in the market right now, even when they market it as a, not just an homage, but like a
good enough is not good enough for us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
what we're looking at here are the prototypes. Yeah. And since we got these on our wrists and tested them out, I've made probably almost 40 changes to them.
When do you, so that's another question. So when do you expect to see the final versions, the final shipment?
First week of Christmas.
Wow.
So
that's a quick turnaround for a Kickstarter. Most Kickstarters is like a year or two out.
Well, so
I ate up all of the manufacturing on my end. Yeah. I spent the whole pandemic basically working on this. We've gone through 3 manufacturers. The last manufacturer, unfortunately, we terminated our business with them and they kept our deposit, $14,000.
Yikes.
Yeah.
And I had to make a judgment call that I could either see this through or I could take the loss. And I decided, you know what? I've gone this far. I'm going to keep going. So what you're seeing there, the loom shot, we use Super Luminova. It's the best loom on the market that you can get, C3 grade. And you get a whole night out of it when you charge it up. We just upgraded to 25 layers of it.
It's so visible. I love this visibility of the numbers.
I mean, we tested it within
that way, you know,
within like a half an hour of getting our first our prototypes.
One of the first things I wanted to say.
Yeah, we tested that, and then we dunked it in, you know, a tub of water. So we
took a bucket of water from the kitchen and put it out on the porch. And the first thing I did, I was like, "Oh, here we go." Bloop.
Yep.
But dragging it behind the boat and leaving it in the lake for a night or two.
Oh no, the ocean. That's even better.
If we're going to make claims and promises to our customers, then they need to be accurate.
Yep.
I mean, I worked on fishing boats for a while, and the guys who said the 200 meters, the guys on the docks who get up at 5 a.m. and go home at 7, they'd probably be laughing a little bit, you know, just at that, you know, because they're going on and their boats are leaving the harbor. They'd be like, 200 meters, man. I just got this Psycho for like, you know, what, $30 or something, and it's worked perfectly fine for me.
Seiko's a great company.
They are. And
what's your price range right now for the Kickstarter? It looks like there's a couple of different options here.
Yeah, if you pull it up, Max, we'll bring it up here.
The individual watches are $285, and that's going to be with your choice of strap as well as a 1-year limited warranty. If that watch fails for any reason, we will back it, as long as it's not user error. As long as you haven't pulled that watch apart and ruined it yourself, we will replace it, but we probably won't have to. So I can't stress enough the amount of time and research that went into the authenticity aspect of this, because these not only are the watches themselves authentic down to the millimeter, down to the color of radium. I looked at the chemical composition of radium and how it aged over time and why it turns certain colors and oxidizes, and I was able to essentially figure out that radium, when it was applied during World War II, required an activator to get it to glow a certain color. And the activator used by Waltham was copper. Copper oxidizes over time and it blooms, and then the dial burns. Radium is obviously radioactive. It's highly toxic. But figuring out what the color was when it was new was actually relatively difficult, because even a new old stock watch 80 years down the road is going to be aged. It's going to be brown and black and gray.
Of the radium anyway, so it will have burned through. No matter what, even if it's sat in a drawer, you know, things are going to be dead.
Right.
Well, 80 years is still 80 years, whether it's sat in a drawer or, you know, was on somebody's wrist or whatever. I mean, it's still 80 years. So it's hard. You can't.
Exactly.
That off lemonade yellow is the correct color. I back it. I guarantee it.
So
and
this is not faux. What's it? Faux Tina. This is what it should have looked like.
That's what it looked like out of the box in 1943.
Yep.
So I mean, Cameron said he's his own worst enemy. He's right, because for the business, he's going through and taking every minute change with it, which is really good, because there's not really a stone that's been left unturned as far as, you know.
Let me tell you, even the font on that dial had to be custom made.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't go into Microsoft Word and go 1943 Waltham and it brings up what font you're looking for.
Right.
I must have sat on myfont.com or something and I had a dozen different dial examples, because there were, you know, some latitude involved with dial printing in those days. And it took me like 2 months just combing through font after font after font, and me going, no, that 7 is too lazy. No, that W isn't emphasized enough. No, that E is looking at me funny. Like, just.
And even after they came in with the prototypes, like we'd have like the 7, it would be, you know, like the 7, we'd go, oh wait, that's a little bit too close to the second hand.
Everything has been tweaked and refined and refined and refined again.
Yeah.
And
Max, can you bring up the picture of the straps? I gotta.
Yeah.
I guess the question idea. So I like these. I guess my question is, in the future, not with.
I know what you're going to ask, but go ahead and ask.
Because the modern static lines are yellow and the old static lines were not. Would there be an older static line option?
We're looking at probably a dozen different band varieties right now, maybe even 24 when we include leather. Metal eyelets, sewn eyelets, different lines, as you say, different colors. We're looking at, and obviously these, what you're looking at here, these are recreated off of Gus Strap Company. with the metal eyelets during World War II.
Mhm.
So, fun fact, and I will show you, the ordnance watches were shipped in little boxes like this.
Well, here,
Look
let's
how
pull
small
you
it is.
up. Hang on, let's pull you up large here.
Let's see if I can
You
figure
can
out
see
which
in the
one
palm of
it
my
is.
hand how small this box is. It's about 1.5 inches by 2 1/4. The originals were shipped in these little. The watch heads would go in here, obviously.
Dated and
And
inspection stamped, right? Is it?
on the rear, the Ordnance Department quality seal. It was inspected, stamped, and on the front, date stamped when the watch went into the crate and was shipped overseas. We have recreated these. We're waiting for them to arrive now, but all of our watches will be packed in period correct packaging, and then go into modern outer packaging. Here's an A11 box. This is original. So let me tell you, out of the last 3 years that I've been doing this, the boxes have been the most difficult aspect because I had to track these down, and the collectors that have these kinds of things in the horology community don't like sharing them because a lot of them are published authors, a lot of them are historians, and they like to keep their finds, so to speak, limited to their private collections or exhibits. I call it gatekeeping, personally. And
Yeah, sounds a lot like that.
there were several of the big names. I'm not naming any names. It's all fair and love and watchmaking, so I've learned. But on some of the old school watch forums, I was going around like slogging through the trenches, like I couldn't even get pictures of these boxes. And the crazy thing is that at the end of the day, this one here, this is a 10609. That there is a 10617. They're very similar. The one above, that's an A11. We actually didn't find the correct Navy box until last week. I had a label done up on the computer. I'm like, I guess this is what it looks like. And not to pat myself on the back, but I will. The label that I had doctored up just based on my research without, I was firing blind, was almost word for word correct. I was really proud of myself. But this one here, so I'm posting on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on eBay, I'm putting out emails. I can't even find a picture of these stupid boxes. And my friend out in Colorado, Alex Foley, he messages me and he goes, "You're looking for a Waltham box?" Yes. "Oh, dude, I bought one on eBay like 15 years ago. It's been sitting on my shelf. You want it?" 2 days later, it's sitting in the box.
Yeah.
That's how this
I
stuff
So-
happens, man.
The last one that we acquired, this is crazy. John is at D-Day Conneaut in Ohio last week, and my friend from Utah messages me, and he goes, "Hey, are you still looking for those watch boxes?" He left the event, went to the antique mall, and found it in a junk bin. So the degrees of separation involved in that. Here's my friend from Utah at an event in Ohio that my business partner is also attending, who's from New Hampshire, and they find the box that we've been looking for 3 years in the antique mall a mile down the road.
In the junk bin.
That's otherwise not published anywhere. And I emailed a couple of the foremost experts on this subject, the aforementioned gatekeepers, and I said, "Do you have one of these?" And the guy got back to me and he goes, "First one I've ever seen."
Well, now he can have it if he goes to Timeworn Watches and gets on your Kickstarter.
That's right.
And he can have your version, which is not gatekeeping. This is the opposite of gatekeeping. You're
Yeah,
making these accessible.
These need to be
to
accessible to people because
not
You
just
see-
reenactors, not just reenactors,
No,
but
the
everyone.
general public. No, because there are so many people out there, watch enthusiasts, vintage clothing enthusiasts, people who had a grandfather, a great uncle, a dad, some kind of loved one who served in World War II. And a lot of the time when you talk to these guys, they don't want to talk about the things they saw and the horrors that occurred. They go, I had that neat little watch, that little Waltham watch. That thing saved my life.
never stop ticking.
That's right.
So speaking of which, what's on the inside of these? I know you guys are using real
Okay.
mechanical movements.
We are. And that is actually, in the modern watchmaking world, kind of difficult. So you really kind of have your cheap seats, which admittedly we're using because they perform the same as the expensive.
And you need the subdial in the right place. You need the sweep to happen the
Correct.
right way, and the hacking. So if
Originally,
somebody's making a movement that does that, you got to pick it.
originally we were going with Miyota, and a couple months into this and negotiating with them, they canceled their mechanical line, and
Oh.
another micro brand bought out every mechanical movement that they had. And God bless and good luck. That's Vario Watches. He does a great trench watch. I own one. Bless him. He's going to run out of them eventually, though, and he'll be in the same boat as us. The other option was your classic ETA, However, they will not sell to anybody who's not in the Swatch group, which requires manufacturing in Switzerland and whatnot.
And Tudor, I think, uses Atom Movements.
A lot of the bigger names do now.
Swiss, yeah, it's Swiss company.
And that also left Sellita. I have tried half a dozen times to get a wholesale account with Sellita and failed. However, my current manufacturer has their contact information, and we're going to be receiving a wholesale price list from them next week. So we are tentatively going to offer it as an upgrade. However, what we're using right now is Seagull Movements. Seagull has been around since the late 50s. They're an established company. A lot of people will turn their nose up at Chinese and Asia, but I'm telling you right now, 20 and 21 joules respectively, hacking function. It's the same exact movement that Timex uses in their mechanical camper. For a budget movement, I'm okay with it. They're serviced and oiled. We guarantee them for a year. We haven't had any failures.
And it's under $300. You get
And it's
Right.
$300.
I think that's probably the biggest point to say is that, you know, when you're talking about watches at these price points that last and that are guaranteed, you know, it's almost, in my view, it's almost a non-issue of the type of movement that's in it. You know, if I'm getting the look and I'm getting the guarantee and I'm getting the period correct box, you know, like if you're really looking for that experience,
I was
you
just
know,
about
and
to
you're
say,
not looking to do
as an
you know,
experience.
a few $1,000s maybe for an old one that, you know, that might work, that you also might have to get fixed. You know, if you're really looking for that experience, you know, you'd be hard pressed to find it.
How much should the government
at that
pay
price point
for a watch?
The one thing that we really, you know, and Cameron had said is that, you know, like, oh, the China aspect is that
They've been great to work with.
Been through a number of manufacturers.
I went to Germany
and the US, and you know what?
Yep.
China responds in 6 hours. We work with them. They've had, I mean, just in the last, like Cameron said, 40 different changes.
There's been a big laziness factor. When we went to Europe, Germany and Switzerland with offices in the UK, they did not want the work. I spent months and months and months at 3 o'clock in the morning going back and forth with graphic designers who were deliberately messing it up and stalling it out. If you don't want the work, just say so.
Well, and you started by saying you started with an American company that.
Yep.
And
I don't want
money.
I don't feel like I should name names.
Just initials. How about initials?
That's what they are. It's initial.
FTS. The name of the company is FTS.
Yep.
I mean, the thing with the, I mean, you know, Germany, we went down to birthday cards to look at the colors. That's what.
Oh yeah, I was sending them Pantones and hex codes. And the designer is sending me back a wedding invitation and birthday card website going, can you find the color on there?
What?
Yeah,
it was bizarre.
Like, and listen, having worked with many Chinese companies over the years, even just getting our fabric made and stuff that you cannot get in the U.S. anymore. You know, the textile industry, especially.
Even in China, it took us 4 months to get the proper twill for straps.
Yeah, it's a lot of the stuff that I've had to custom make fabrics, and they've been wonderful to deal with. Absolutely wonderful. They want to get it right.
They call me Mr. Cameron. Yes, sir. No, sir. They're polite.
Yeah. And the shops are clean, too. I got a picture from one of their operations. We were having our hats.
Oh, yeah. No, they sent us production photos the whole time.
It looked like a surgery room. I mean, like, it was absolutely perfect. I'm not usually a, you know, such a pro China, but their manufacturing and their attention to detail is I'm actually very impressed.
But I mean, you get
very good.
You get out what you put in. That's what we were learned from this aspect, which we did not from the other two. So, and you know, we were a little wary going in. But we really have to hold people's hands through manufacturing. And when we shopped American, I flew out there. I took a business trip. I went out to the facility. Excuse me. And I'm learning that if you're not there every step of the way, corners will be cut. Your vision will not come to fruition. Mm-hmm. And
well, that's a bad partner. I mean, that's just
is. Yeah, it's just bad business.
You know, like there's,
you know, they kept our deposit.
Well, and it's bad production and operations management. Really, I mean, if you have a client that comes in that says, "Here's my money, here's my specifications," and you are looking for every operation to cut corners, that's.
I delivered them original watches, a folder of specs and pictures. I went back and forth with them for 3 or 4 months before I had even hired them. I flew there. We sat there with a wipe-off board and went through it. And by the time we were done, it was death by invoice. No, like death by change order. I'm sure if you're in manufacturing, in listening to this, you know what that means.
Yeah.
They didn't want the work. They weren't interested. They took my deposit. They spent it on payroll or whatever the heck else. And they just kept updating the invoice over and over and over again for things like loom application. They were charging me for engraving by the letter.
Yeah.
All these things that had been stipulated in part of the purchase agreement that we signed, they violated immediately. They had no intention of doing the watches out of the retainer.
Yikes.
There was a hat company I dealt with very briefly that was charging for brushing the hats off before they put it in the box.
That's what these guys were doing.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
initially,
it's like, we're going to look at this for 3 seconds and put it in a box. Well, that's extra. You know, like that's what
initially the guy that I was dealing with, we had a great rapport. He called, he talked shop with me. He wanted the business. He had actually solicited our business by mailing a letter to our P.O. box when he saw that we were messing with a couple different trademarks we were interested in. And I feel like there's probably trouble in the hen house or whatever's going on there, because the actual CEO, and don't forget it, because he only signs every single email with it, he took over as soon as they asked me for more money. So the gentleman number one calls me and he apologizes and he's embarrassed because it was not an insignificant amount. By the time we were done, the watches, which we had been quoted, I don't even remember the wholesale amount at that time was.
Well, listen, suffice it to say,
it went up like $150.
Yeah,
I'd love to see these guys cost accountants. I'd love to sit down and talk to them and see how their minds work, that this is something that they would.
They don't have
even try, like, to just be like, let me update this.
I ended up doing my own artwork, my own CAD, my own spec sheet, everything. I held their hand every step of the way, and they still couldn't get it done.
Check this out. So this is a field. Is this
fantastic picture?
Okay, that came in literally like an hour after we
launched. Yeah,
my buddy sent it to me. He's like, "Can you use this?" I'm like, "All right." I sent it to Cameron and I said, "You've seen this, I bet." And he goes, "I've never seen this."
No,
I mean, this is a debate.
So Max, I would like to zoom in as far as you can on the watch he's working on. Is that as good? Okay, there we go.
As much as I got.
That's an Elgin 539 A11, and I can tell by the blackened ratchet wheels in the back of it.
Yep.
Too cool. I can even tell what he's working on.
Does that now? They're red, actually.
And I can tell by the buckle shape that's an American Strap Company buckle.
So, guys, I mean, if you can't hear it in what Cameron is saying, I mean, he has become the expert on these. Look, here's some straps in the background, Cameron. What are those? I'm just kidding.
See the square buckle hanging next to the pocket watch to the left? That's Gus Strap Company.
You see, I can't. You see, when I look at all these pictures, I'm like, I can't see the difference. The black and white is just it blends in, and then Cameron's like, no, there's this and this and this.
That picture is too cool.
On the bench here, another rectangular.
It's actually not rectangular. It's a half oval, and it's got a beveled edge, which is what American was using.
Well, guys, I mean, you guys have impressed the hell out of me. I know Cameron and I have been in touch about this since he started.
I wanted to understand how these were made, how they were issued, the requirements that were held, the standards that were put in place. Because if I was going to make these as good as the originals, then I had to understand what the product was.
And we don't want to. I mean, we don't want to stop at this.
Every time I do a research dive, I learn something new every single time, whether it's nomenclature or how these things were repaired or what numbers they were issued in. I mean, every day I sit down at the computer with a cup of coffee and I learn something new.
So that experience of kind of the I guess the homework that you have to do on something like this to get it right. As far as I'm looking at this, because we're launching a magazine this fall, and we're going to do quarterly because it's a lot easier for everybody involved.
If you'll have me, I've been working.
But that's something I would love to sit down and if you have something prepared, I mean, I'd love to check it out. I'm sure we can feature it because I think so. Like I try to look at watches kind of through, I guess, kind of like the Street View Anthony Bourdain style, where instead, like it's life through the lens of horology, where he looked at life through the lens of food, but still kind of talked to folks about like, tell me about this dish and like why do you like this one versus that one. And so I think at least here, there's a story here about like
my motivation experience. Here, my bottom line is as I was growing up, and I won't say that I apprenticed or anything like that. That'd be hyperbolic. I worked, so to speak, in a family friend's jewelry store, which usually meant getting slices of pizza and dropping off checks down the street. But I would sit down at that workbench in Kevin's shop, and I would pull watches apart, and I was fascinated by it. And my grandfather shopped there when Kevin's father, also a World War II veteran, ran the place. And my grandfather was in the Air Corps during World War II, and he was on a medical team that would fly to remote locations in Europe and would offer hospital services like dental, cast setting, things like that, things that were not available to these guys at remote air bases. And he wore Waltham wristwatches his entire life. And because of that, just this sort of culmination, this combination of different factors. That's my grandfather's birthday on the back of the watch.
Yeah,
So
let me
every day
pull
when
that
I
one
get
up.
up,
Is that on all of them, or are they?
that's on the enlisted watch. He was a sergeant. And so every day when I get up and I put that watch on my wrist, be better.
Yeah, man.
Because I'm making these to his standard, not mine.
Well, I mean,
I like that.
That's
I like that a lot.
This project's awesome. I really want to see you guys do really well, so we're going to do some more about you guys and about the Kickstarter. I know there's 2 weeks left. Get on there now. The price is $285.
And if you buy multiples, we have discounts in place.
Yep. And then after the Kickstarter, I guess it'll be on your website. You'll be able to buy on the shop. But the Kickstarter, obviously, the Kickstarter pledges.
We've also got T-shirts, caps, and we're about to introduce coasters as well. The coasters look like the watch dials that we make, and they glow in the dark. They're made out of PVC.
Ooh, that'll be cool. I like that.
And I mean, that's not gonna. I mean, just with the World War II watches, we've got a project.
It doesn't stop with this. We've got a German watch in the works. We've got 2 Vietnam watches. We've got a couple other U.S. World War II models. We're going to do a ladies' watch as well. The Timeworn starts with these 4, and the sky is the limit.
You know, it's neat. By the 50s, they started putting moisture detection inside the dial. Did you ever see that? It was like it was for diver watches. They had a
Yep.
It's like a moon, and if it turned pink or something, it had.
Who's the company making that now? MVMT, I believe. They do.
Yeah, but there's been a couple of copies over the years. But MVMT kind of copied it obviously doesn't work, but it's just a little half moon that shows.
So believe it or not, there was no moisture detector in any of these boxes in World War II, with exception to one. Bulova put what the heck is the name of it? Silica.
Oh, the silica packet.
They would put silica packets in with the ordnance watches, but otherwise, again, they couldn't.
So my grandfather wore Bulova, and my grandmother got him. This is the one watch I have from my family. My 2 watches actually, but my grandmother sent my grandfather for his birthday a Bulova watch, a tank watch, a non-military tank watch. When he was stationed in Paris during the occupation.
You've shown me that actually.
During the occupation. I showed you that. Yeah, it's and so for my 21st birthday, it became mine. I never met my grandfather, but he wore Bulovas every day of his life.
Bulova's military watches, I hate to say it, had the biggest failure rate of the war.
Really?
I've got several War Department letters sent directly to Bulova saying, you better get it together real fast.
That's a shame.
They weren't meeting their contract numbers, and I don't mean like 500-600 watches off. I mean like 8,000 short a month.
Well, I'm still a big Hamilton fan. Being a Pennsylvania boy, they came to Lancaster, and now they are owned by Omega.
Okay, so Waltham, the cases that they used were manufactured by Keystone Case Company.
Yeah, sure.
And where was that? Lancaster, Pennsylvania, I think.
Yeah, everything was out of Lancaster. Keystone also did a lot of pocket watches and stuff like that too back in the day.
The 2 big waterproof cases during World War II were Keystone and Star. Mm-hmm. And obviously we went with Keystone because of we were actually looking into the trademarking on that to see if we could use their company logo on the underside of the case backs like originals were. It's in the works.
So if you're making a ladies' watch, I mean, I don't know if you're interested, and you can tell me to just, no, we're good. But I bought my mother a 1949 Omega, and it's kind of a similar patina and a similar size. So you guys might be interested in something like that. I don't know what your
Max,
design
if you'll scroll down
calendars
the Kickstarter,
are, but
you'll get to a photo. Where is it? Stop.
There's lady.
So if you'll zoom in, they're all wearing Waltham Ordnance watches, Army nurses.
Oh, okay.
However, there were several ladies models exclusively made for women. Bulova made one, a nurse watch in tank style, like you're referring to. So we've looked into a couple of different options. So never say never.
Yeah, nice civilian watch would be cool too. But listen, guys, even if you just did these 4 watches, I think you made an incredible impression on the world of vintage recreation. This is not an homage. This is as close as you can get. You know,
We're doing our best. I mean, we took these prototypes and, hey, we've got a minute. I'll go through everything I changed on the watch that's on my wrist right now, just for the sake of doing it. The case back that they made for us was 12 sides instead of 10. We changed that. The edge is beveled. The originals were not. We changed that. The bottom of the case also had a beveled edge. Ours is machined straight. We changed that. Our lugs are about 1 millimeter too thick. We changed that. On the dial, upside down. The numerals are about 0.5 millimeter too thin. We changed that. Our hands have a slight taper. We changed that. The second hand didn't have a tail. We changed that. We went with the larger tapered crown that Keystone used on their waterproof watches. This is an original spec crown. It's just difficult to wind, so I changed it for ease of use. The straps, we upgraded the material to 100% twill because it's more durable. The dial color. The shade is correct like it's supposed to be. It's reflective because it's modern paint. We changed that. We went with non-reflective matte grade paint.
And that's
the hands.
just the Odine.
The hands on this are painted stainless steel. Originals were fire blued. We upgrade to fire blue steel.
oh, cool.
So just about everything I could change dimensionally, aesthetically, functionally to upgrade these watches for the sake of both authenticity and ease of use, we did that.
And remember, guys, they're going off of 80 and 85-year-old pieces. So again, the research going into finding what they actually looked like brand new.
I've gone through about 24 originals in this process.
And manuals and letters and stuff like stuff.
Original specifications, primary sources, repair statistics, photographs. I have poured over this information steadily for the last 3 years. I do it almost every day.
So this is the prototype. What we're going to see with the 285, if you back it today, is something even closer to the original watch than what you're seeing right here.
We just wanted to get them marketed and available to people as quickly as we could without compromising our standards or authenticity. So if what you see you're impressed with, it's going to be even better.
I am incredibly impressed, and I've been doing this a long time. I have some of the original pieces like this. Cameron's seen a few of mine.
I have.
And I have, real high-end early stuff too, Omega and whatever. I would proudly wear one of these. I personally am on the Kickstarter for 2, and once the website is launched and these come out, I'm going to get one of all of them, probably a couple of them, and I'd even get a couple more to give as gifts because they're just too cool.
That's another thing as well. If you're a small business owner or a big business owner, you want these in your shop, we have wholesale numbers and we have the ability to get you a wholesale count squared away during the Kickstarter or otherwise. We've received probably 4 or 5 messages this week alone. What is it, Tuesday? Of people wanting them on their shelves, and we are more than happy to accommodate.
We're going to carry these at Lunar Replicas, by the way.
Yeah, by all means.
A few of them. A lot of
reach out to me. I'm going to be handling this. The camera doesn't have to handle everything. He's got enough on his plate on the style of accounts, but we've got a lot that's going to be coming out, so we're really excited for these.
Keep the hat. We got hats.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Yeah, I definitely want to write about this. I think this will be a good thing to kind of stick in the magazine. That's interesting because we have,
and when
whole slew of things, but nothing like this.
When we terminated our business with the other company that shall not be named, they have a couple of publications as well, and I was really, really bummed about losing access to that. So this is great for us. Yeah,
here we are.
We'd appreciate that very much.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We did about 45 minutes with you, and I think that we're going to keep the link up for the Kickstarter. Timeworn Watches. Cameron and John, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching this kind of late night off the cuff one. We don't normally do these too much off the cuff like this. We try to give everybody a little bit of notice so folks can plan But I think once in a while it's fun to kind of.
This was too square.
It's fun. It's fun to just kind of do one,
And
hip pocket.
hey, we've got another round of samples being delivered in October before the full order drops in December. So if you'd like to have us back and check out some updates, we'd be happy
absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch, and everybody else watching either now or later. This should stay up in the groups, on the YouTube, I think we're on Twitch too. We're all over the place. We got to be. So this should stay up. So if you're not watching us live, you'll see us later. And after that, I guess that's it.
That's it.
Have a good night.
Everyone,
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.